It's because that defendant right there chose to refuse to act like any reasonable law enforcement officer.
What unfolds when those who are meant to uphold the law choose to violate it instead?
I hereby sentence Mr. Raja to 25 years in the Department of Corrections. That is as a minimum mandatory, which was required that he serve day for day.
Here are such evil officers who shattered families and disrupted lives, with the last one being so terrifying that you must see it to believe it.
You are sentenced to serve 18 months in the Florida Department of Corrections.
So stick around, it will only get more intense. This first case dates back to October 2015, when Officer Newman Raja, a seasoned cop, crossed a line no one should have.
All this because Corey Jones, undeniably a black man, was on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck. Now, that's not accurate. It's not because Corey Jones was sitting there waiting for a tow truck. It's because that defendant right there chose to refuse to act like any reasonable law enforcement officer approaching a stranded citizen in help. That is why Corey Jones died that evening. He recklessly created a situation which could only be expected to result in somebody being seriously injured or killed. And all the evidence is going to show three things at the end of this trial. It's going to show that that defendant shot and killed Corey Jones. It's going to show that he at no time acted like a law enforcement officer. And it's going to show that he is guilty as charged of manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder with a...
Jones's attorney made certain to hold the corrupt cop accountable, exposing his lies to the entire world.
Corey Jones was doing nothing except waiting for help on the side of the road because his SUV broke down. And one of the few people that should have unquestionably been there to assist him on the side of that road did exactly the opposite. Instead of being Corey Jones's saving grace, he was his angel of death. The evidence will show that there's no way Corey Jones knew, even at the time that he was running, fleeing from the back of his vehicle, running into the dark, seeking cover, laying there on the ground, dying, breathing his last breath. No way that he knew that the person that actually shot and killed him was a law enforcement officer. But see, unfortunately for Corey Jones, his bad luck was turning much worse. Because unknown to him, that defendant was on duty. See, he was a police officer at that time of the Palm Beach Gardens Police Department. He was working a detail, a plainclothes detail, where he was supposed to surveil neighborhoods, looking for car burglars. And if he saw anything, he's supposed to call up marked units to come and take care of the issue. And he was supposed to be wearing a tactical vest, like you see on TV. Well, guess what? That's not what he was doing. He didn't have that vest on. He didn't have a badge around his neck. He didn't have a hat that said police. He didn't even have his radio or his department-issued firearm on him at the time. He was just sitting carelessly behind in his van, unmarked.
In a scenario where it would have been essential, Raja's failure to identify himself as a law enforcement official proves how guilty he was of this heinous act.
He cuts right in front of Corey Jones's SUV as it's parked. He positions himself diagonally, front end to front end of Corey Jones's vehicle, with their bumpers mere feet apart, in an unmarked van with zero indication whatsoever that he's a law enforcement officer at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday turning to Sunday. That's what he chose to do. And instead of doing what anybody would expect and conducting a regular stop and getting behind the SUV, pulling all the way in front, he is blocking 2 lanes of traffic that are coming off of that interstate with an unmarked van. He runs around the front of that van and immediately becomes confrontational with Corey Jones.
Raja made the biggest mistake of his life when he did this.
Now, Corey Jones, he's got an expensive jump kit. He goes into not the nicest parts of Delaware Beach for his job. So he did what any lawful American can do. He purchased a 380 hand. He didn't even pull out the badge, which was in his wallet, in his back pocket, to show to Corey Jones. Much less put on that vest that said police or even had his radio.
Raja claimed it was self-defense, but a simple piece of evidence shattered his lie.
There's nothing but an overly aggressive and immediately hostile attitude. You hear it for yourselves. You make the decision. You're the judges of the credibility of everybody, including him, because you will hear from him. Yeah, I'm good. Really? That's what he's saying. That's not how an officer talks to a citizen at 3 o'clock in the morning on the side of the road. But that's how he spoke to what he saw with Corey Jones on the side of that road. And when Corey Jones laughs and says, yeah, now he starts saying even more hostile. Get your hands up. Get your hands up. That's what he's screaming. That's how he's treating a stranded citizen. Immediately within seconds. That's what he's saying. You know, profane words being shouted at a time when a guy is sitting with a broken down car.
Kudos to this attorney for his dedication, but did his words bring about any justice? Let's see.
Once again, get your effing hands up. Drop. 3 shots. Corey's running away. He's already retreating behind his vehicle. Physical evidence shows 3 shots. He chose to fire out of that gun because of the way that he acted. He made a decision to shoot first and ask questions later. That was his decision. But see, this isn't the end of the story. Because now Corey Jones is running for his life. He is running for the cover of darkness. He's thrown down the gun already that he had in his hand that was meant to protect him. And you got 10 seconds. Because he didn't stop. No, he kept shooting. But you got 10 seconds. That doesn't sound like a long time. When you sit there and you look at that clock, and you hear those seconds tick away, and you consider that Corey Jones is running for his life after being shot on the side of the road, that's forever. 10 seconds between the third and the fourth shot.
The worst part about it all was that officers' disregard for the man's life. Would he have done the same if it was someone he knew?
He fired those last 3 shots at 1 second intervals each. Control. Boom! 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 Not fast. Before getting medical assistance for Corey Jones. Before getting much needed assistance. If he was truly in fear of his life, well, he needs to call the cavalry. 30 seconds. Manslaughter means Corey Jones is dead, and it's by the culpable negligence or act of that defendant. And he's going to explain to you, the judge will tell you what culpable negligence means. He's going to say it means a course of conduct showing a reckless disregard for human life or the safety of other persons exposed to its dangerous effects of conscious indifference to the consequences.
Just when it seemed justice was lagging behind, Raja encountered a force that no badge could shield him from: retribution.
We, the jury, find as follows. As to count 1, we find a defendant guilty of manslaughter while armed with a as charged in the information. As to count 2, we found a defendant guilty of attempted first-degree murder as charged in the information. If you find a defendant guilty of attempted first-degree murder, you must next answer the following questions. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant actually possessed a firearm? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant actually discharged a firearm? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant in discharging the firearm actually caused great bodily harm or death to Corey L. Jones? Yes.
After 3,000 pages of evidence and countless audio and video recordings, the jury ruled.
On count 1, I hereby sentence him to 25 years in the Department of Corrections. And on count 2, I hereby sentence Mr. Raja to 25 years in the Department of Corrections. That is as a minimum mandatory, which was required that he serve day for day. Those sentences will run concurrently.
If you thought that was horrifying, imagine someone using their badge to turn their personal grudges into literal fire. The next story will have you questioning where the line is drawn.
How could it, when we've allowed this particular individual like him to do the things that he's done?
One devastating night in New Jersey, a family's home was suddenly engulfed in flames.
To understand where I'm coming from with regards to this, especially if there's going to be any appellate review of this sentence. I want those judges to know the sentence to be imposed in this particular case is because Mr. Dotro, through his conduct and his admissions, spanning from 1998 to this year, represents the worst that we could possibly expect from someone in our society.
So, who bears the responsibility? Michael Dotro, a police officer dedicated to safeguarding the very citizens he targeted. But what the court revealed next really put this cop in his place.
Yes, he's caused very specific damage to Captain Enderkel and his family, to Ms. Zog, to Ms. Dotro, to his own parents, to his families, to his brothers. But what he's really done, and what we're going to be left with after he's walking out the door to spend the next third of his life in prison, is allow people a basis to say that our system of justice has no integrity. How could it, when we've allowed this particular individual like him, here in Middlesex County, here in Edison, to do the things that he's done, similar to what we see on the news every day from other parts of the country? Because of what this individual has done, because of him and people like him, victims are afraid to come forward to be part of the criminal justice system.
After giving a fiery scolding that left Dotro hiding his face, the judge handed down a sentence that would give anyone nightmares.
Even more importantly, we have other individuals every day who put on a badge which represents honor, service, and integrity. Without question, go out there every day, leave their family behind to protect an entire community with hopes that they can make it through the day, through the end of their shift, so that they can go back home to their family and lead a normal human being life, because the life of a police officer is not a normal.
Dotro was sentenced to 20 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 17 years. If you thought this was as bad as it gets, it's not, because this next officer doesn't just mess things up. He completely obliterated any faith I had in law enforcement officers.
Were there. I did not put the narcotics there.
Deputy Zachary Wester didn't merely misuse his badge, he wielded it as a shield to hide his sick and disgusting mentality. It's horrifying to think that someone sworn to protect and serve could cause such harm and devastation.
A substance that appears to be an illegal narcotic. Do you know anything about that?
I do.
You ever seen this before?
No, what is that?
I'm just trying to figure out how that stuff got in your car. You're going to go to jail today for possession of methamphetamine, okay?
Oh man, dude, I'm serious, dude. Anything.
This officer's denial and shamelessness are troubling to watch. However, he keeps up with his lies.
And I knew my truck was clean. I knew it was.
Anything in the vehicle I need to be concerned about? Rocket launchers? Okay.
It is yogurt, sir.
I know. Okay.
It's yogurt.
How about this, though?
That is not mine. No, sir.
Okay.
Now, the white small plastic baggie that was in that spoon that the deputy just showed you on this video, had you ever seen that before?
No, sir.
Was that in your car?
No, sir.
As far as motive, the prosecution claims the 28-year-old officer was ambitious and
wanted to move to narcotics as quickly as possible. Wester testified he never planted any drugs.
Were there. I did not put the narcotics there.
The courtroom was filled with gasps as the extent of Wester's misconduct became clear. Ultimately, the judge announced Wester's sentence, and it was comforting to know he would be serving a lengthy sentence.
In the state of Florida versus Zachary Tyler Wester, case number 19-CF-431. We, the jury, find as follows as to the counts charged in the information. Count 1, guilty of racketeering as charged. Count 2, not guilty. Count 3, not guilty. Count 4, not guilty. Count 5, not guilty. Count 41, guilty of possession of controlled substance related to February 15, 2018, as charged. Count 42, not guilty. Count 43, not guilty. Count 44, guilty of possession of a controlled substance related to April 17, 2018, as charged.
As to count 65, false imprisonment, that's a third-degree felony. You were sentenced to serve 1 year and 1 day in the Florida Department of Corrections, consecutive to count 64. Counts 7, 9, 10, 31, 33, 34, 41, 44, 48, 64, and 65 are to be served consecutive to each other for a total sentence in this case of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections. This sentence of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections is to run concurrent with a 5-year Department of Corrections sentence in count 1. Therefore, it is the intention of the court that you are sentenced to serve a total of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections. I'm also going to award the defendant 58 days jail credit as to count 1 and count.
And that wraps up today's video. Every single officer you've seen here is now behind bars, serving time for their shocking crimes. If this video left you as stunned as it did us, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on stories like these.